Good morning, everybody. I'm so honored to be here and be the head football coach at University of Arkansas. I want to thank Greg Sankey for all he did. I know a lot of coaches have, and every one of us, I'll guarantee, it wasn't because somebody started it. It's because they felt it and they meant it. I have colleagues that are head football coaches in other conferences, and in our weekly meetings, Commissioner Sankey, and sometimes bi-weekly meetings, we were so informed of everything that was going on in the realm of college football, and I felt like we were certainly always ahead on our knowledge of what we had, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank Hunter Yurachek, our athletic director. He's a rock star. I think you ask any head coach at Arkansas, and they'll say the same thing about him. He's my boss, obviously. I consider him and his wife, Jennifer, our friends, and I'm very thankful, especially because he hired me. I brought Grant Morgan and Myron Cunningham with me today. If it's up to me, I'd have brought the whole damn team. We have an outstanding football team that works extremely hard, and they bought into what we're selling. And I'm so appreciative of all of them, including our coaching staff. Grant Morgan has his master's degree completed. He was a finalist for the Burlsworth Award. He also was first-team All-SEC player, and he'll be one of our 11 super seniors coming back. I'm excited for you guys to talk to him because he's really, really a great young man. Myron Cunningham is also a super senior that we have, our left tackle. Turned down several hundreds of thousands of dollars, in my opinion. We have a process, and looked like he was going to go high in the middle rounds of the NFL draft last year. He elected to come back. It tells you something about our coaching staff, not myself, about our assistant coaching staff. 11 super seniors, 12 what I'm going to call regular seniors coming back, which would be a total of 23. I'm proud of our coaching staff. I think a lot of those guys coming back, as I've said before, is because of our coaching staff. When I hired our coaches, it was about communication, about the most powerful thing coming from your body is your mouth. And we wanted people who understood how to teach. We wanted people who understood how to talk to kids when they had times of need. When at times, if you communicate with somebody on a regular basis, it's not so hard to say something that might come off as something they don't want to hear. If you wait a while, it's very difficult to have that conversation. You know, I learned a lot of things as a head coach and continuing to learn. One of them was as soon as your bowl game's over, or what was supposed to be our bowl game last year, people start coming after your coaches if they're any good. I'm very proud that we were able to keep our 3 coordinators and our strength coach. We were able to keep Barry Odom, who has been very valuable to me. Obviously, he was the head coach at Missouri in this league. I bounced things off of him frequently. He and I, believe it or not, he and I walk quite a bit. Now, he looks like he does, and I look like I'm on his back, but I'm really walking. But we go out there and we walk and we talk and we discuss the team. It's a great 45 minutes so I can learn a little bit more about being a head coach. I love Kendall Browse. He's our offensive coordinator. I like his swagger. I like his confidence. I like his offense. There's so many decisions that you have to make as a quarterback, and you have to make them fast, and he's a great teacher of that, and I'm awful happy we were able to keep him. Scott Fountain came over with me from Georgia. He's actually my neighbor there, and by golly, he's my neighbor over there in Fayetteville now. But he elected to come with us from Georgia. I tell you about him, he's loyal, he's a good recruiter, he's a hard worker. Our special teams will get better. I think last year, especially through the COVID and not knowing exactly who you have each and every week, and sometimes you lose a few players on Friday, Scott did an outstanding job. And then the last coach I want to talk about is Jamil Walker, certainly / Ed Ellis, but those two guys have done a great job with this. You know, the weight room's for a lot of reasons. The biggest reason I know is for confidence. You're building strength, you're building weight, you're building, getting them in shape, but you're also building that confidence, and that's something I felt like the University of Arkansas football team needed. On our football schedule, we are the defending national champions of the hardest football schedule in college. I've looked towards next year, and I think we're going to three-peat in that area next year. However, we're the University of Arkansas in the Southwest Conference West, exactly where we belong, and we're excited about those challenges. We're going to renew some old Southwest Conference rivalries the first 2 weeks of the season at Donald W. Reynolds Stadium. In Rice is very, very physical. Beat Marshall. I believe they were the first team to beat Marshall when Marshall was 7-0, ranked in the top 20 in the country. Very well coached team. We're excited to renew that rivalry in our stadium. The second week we play the University of Texas, and I'm not for sure if anybody's called a much better game than Coach Sarkisian did in the national championship game when he was offensive coordinator at Alabama. So we have high respect for both of those teams. Obviously, the older folks in the state of Arkansas are revved up about the Texas game. I read something where at one point during that rivalry, if you had Arkansas tags and you crossed into the Texas border on a away game, that you were not going to be sold any gas until you got back into Arkansas. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But if it is true, now that's a rivalry. Crossover game this year is with Georgia. I was going to ask Commissioner Sankey if Georgia's moved over to the SEC West because we played them 2 years in a row. But with Georgia, we're excited to go back there. Jamie and I have such outstanding friends there, certainly on the coaching staff. And the reason I mentioned Georgia's, one, it's our crossover game, but the other is because of the indebtedness that I feel towards Kirby Smart. You know, Kirby was very good to me. I wouldn't be the head coach at University of Arkansas without him. And we're looking forward to going back there and seeing our friends and certainly trying to compete against one of the best football teams in America. I'm proud of our state. I'm proud of our university, and especially our players. For y'all who don't know much about Arkansas, it's a proud damn state. It's a beautiful state, hard-working, loyal, honest people. Our university is graduating their students. 100% of our football team that were seniors that exhausted their eligibility graduated. 100% of all student athletes in every sport last year who exhausted their senior eligibility graduated from the University of Arkansas. 8 of our, what I'm going to call regular seniors, have already graduated before the season begins. We have the best city in the SEC, voted by U.S. News and World Report for the 6 years, for the 6th year in a row. 19 returning starters, 9 on offense. On offense, we will return the entire offensive line, tight ends, running back position. Majority of our wideouts, and certainly we lost our quarterback, Felipe Franks, to free agency to the Atlanta Falcons. On defense, we have 10 returning starters. The one that is not returning is John Marshall, who was a 6th-round draft pick of the New York Jets. We have our entire secondary coming back, our entire linebacker group, and all but John Marshall coming back on the D-line. Along with, we did enhance our football team, we believe, with some transfer portal kids there. Our players are currently vaccinated at 89%. Our building is a little over 92% COVID vaccinated. Terry Prentice, we hired to build our flagship program, an NIL. We are the first athletic department in the nation to hire a senior level administrator to specifically oversee student athlete brand development. We feel he and his staff will be a great advantage for us. Lastly, I want to tell you we love this football team. They believe in being blue collar, hard working, tough, physical group of men. We'll be better. I don't know what that means in wins and losses, but excited to get started and get back into Don W. Reynolds Stadium full of fans calling the Hogs. I'll take your questions.
Thank you, Coach Pittman. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll get Victoria, Lawrence, or Fuller to you. We'll start down here front, Coach, on the second row with Tom.
Hey, Sam. Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. So you got all these super seniors and regular seniors. I think 23 was the number.
23.
Does that equate to a big jump? What has to happen to make a jump in this league?
I wish I knew that. We'd jump all over the place. Here's what I do know, that it'll be hard work. The weight room, the process of the program, the belief in the program. I mean, you can't beat anybody if you don't start out thinking you're going or believing you're going to. I think that has changed over the last year. But I think it's just building on what we have done and getting better and getting a few additions to help our football team. But we've got enough players on our team to have a good football team as long as we buy in and we work hard and we execute.
Coach, we'll go to the center section along the right aisle. Trey.
Coach, Trey Biddy, hogsports.com, 24/7 Sports. You mentioned that you have so many starters returning, but you also had mentioned that you expect some battles and some competition with me earlier, particularly at offensive line at the guard spots, Ty Clary, Bo Limmer, Luke Jones, Brady Latham. How do you see those battles shaping up, and where else could we see some real competition with returning starters?
I think, Trey, there's going to be battle all the way up to first game at the guard position. Bo right now is currently behind Ty Clary, and on the other side, Brady Latham is behind Luke Jones. That's an on-paper depth chart. I mean, to me, they're both 1A, whatever it may be. But that competition will make you better, obviously. But I'm excited about that battle. I think we've got to find out who number 2 is at running back. I think that's a big spot there. K.J. Jefferson is our quarterback. Now, does he have competition? You're dang right he's got competition, but he has proven that he can play well in the Southeastern Conference in a game. He started one game, but he played well during that game. So, in the secondary, you have some battles at safety. Certainly some good battles there, and then there's battles everywhere on the D-line. I think we're pretty much figured out the linebacker spot, I think we'll play at least 3 of those guys on a regular with Henry, Bumper Pool, and of course, Grant Morgan. So we've got battles all over the place in punter, kickoff man, and field goal kicker. But I'm a lot of times you have battles, you might not be very good at that position. I think we're good there. I just think we've got to figure out who the starter is.
Coach, we're going to go right in front of us in the center section.
Hello, Coach. How you doing? Gerard Hamilton, Tuscaloosa News. You play on the road at Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU, and then you host Texas A&M. Can you kind of tell us about tell us the importance of this year's off season with that brutal schedule coming up this year?
Well, it's good to see you too, buddy. Well, you just got to take them 1 week at a time. We have 8 in a row, 8 games in a row. Very conscious about that. Then we have a bye, and then, of course, we finish with the Final Four. But for us to have a successful season, we're going to have to stay healthy. Our depth is much better than it was a year ago, but it's certainly not where we want it to be. But we've got to be very conscious of that 8-game stretch. And, of course, you're right. We have 3 games right there in a row where we're on the road. And certainly we will tweak possibly what we do at practice depending on who we have available and certainly the vibe, the feel of our football team physically.
Coach, we're going to stay in the center section, just a row back.
Sam, Wilson Moore, Columbia, Missourian. You talked about Barry Odom earlier, but I was just wondering, what did he bring to the defense? What did he provide his first year as coordinator?
There's a lot of confidence. Our players believe in him. You know, whatever comes out of his mouth, that's what he's going to do, and that's what he's planning on doing as well. You know, we weren't as multiple on defense last year, and I'll be honest with you, we didn't have enough defensive linemen, to be honest with you, to put on the field at one time. We feel like we've solved that problem where we can go back. You know, Barry's an 0-4-3 guy, along with a little bit of odd front and things of that nature, a little bit of under front. We weren't able to do much of that, and therefore we didn't get anybody in second and long. I think the biggest thing that we're trying to emphasize this year is that we can put people in 2nd and 8, 2nd and 12, 2nd and whatever it may be, instead of 2nd and 4 and 5. And we didn't do a very good job of that last year, and part of it was schematics, part of it was we didn't take as many chances on first down. I think we'll do more than that. But to answer your question specifically about Barry, our kids believe in him, and so do I.
Which will go in the center section alongside the right aisle.
Conor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Sam, you spent part of your life in the Big 12 region of the country. I'm curious what your reaction was to hearing the report yesterday about Texas and Oklahoma reportedly reaching out to the SEC about joining the league.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I really haven't thought about that much. I'm so nervous about the schedule we have coming up and all that. I haven't paid much attention about it. But I will say this. I know we're going to play Texas this year. You know, we play them September 11th, and we're very excited for that, and I apologize. I really haven't thought about it much.
Okay, we'll go back over here on our left-hand side alongside the aisle.
Coach, Drew DeArmond, WZZN Radio, Huntsville, Alabama. First, I wanted to ask you about Treylon Burks and how you've seen him grow as a player. He's obviously, I think, one of the most dangerous offensive players in the SEC. And then a second part, I know you're one of the best recruiters in the country. How do you approach the transfer portal, and do you save scholarships on the back end of a class maybe to fill needs for your team each year? Man, oh man, those are two really good questions. Treylon Burks is what he needed to do to become a standout, an unbelievable player, is get in better shape. And we talked to him about that. Just going out there hunting them hogs wasn't really getting him in the greatest shape in the world. So he had to do more than just that. He has done that. He's lost some weight. He looks good. He's more confident, things of that nature. He's got 5X hands. I mean, he's just a tremendous person, a South Arkansas, Warren, Arkansas kid. The second part of your question was?
Transfer portal?
Transfer, thank you. I made 18 on my ACT, so and I'm not bragging, but I kind of am. But the transfer portal, I think the transfer portal just kind of happens. In other words, I don't have a set, we're low on scholarships right now. And so at this point, we're going to get this guy, or we're just not going to take anybody else and hold them for the transfer portal. You know what I mean? I know the transfer portal is going to be there. It's a shame. There's a lot of kids in the transfer portal who don't have a scholarship. It's a shame. And part of it, once you go to the transfer portal at the University of Arkansas, you sure ain't transferring back in, I'm pretty sure if I asked Jamie if I go transfer for a week and figure it out, and then would she let me come back, the probably answer would be no. And so that's how we feel about it at our place too. And unfortunately, the kids are getting, not doing their homework because they're not unable to. But to answer your question, we probably will hold 2 or 3 a year, probably not many more than that.
Which will go over to the right side on the near aisle, about 3/4 of the way back.
Hey, Coach. Anthony Dasher, UJSports.com. I know you've spoken often about your fondness for your time at Georgia. I know you may have answered this question before, but just what you, learned the most working for Coach Smart, this program, and what parts have you tried to apply to what you're doing in Arkansas?
A lot of it's about the system. Certainly the practice plans, the practice schedule. whom I'm not speaking for Coach Smart, whom I'm sure he took a lot of that from when he left Alabama with Nick Saban. And I love the practice schedule like that. The relentless pursuit of athletes is what Kirby Smart does. It's 4.5 inch every day at the University of Georgia, and therefore that's why he's done such a nice job of coaching and such a nice job of recruiting. But I learned the importance of, we're in the SEC, it's different. It just means more. And if it's going to mean more, you better get players. And he taught me that as well. I've always had a knack for recruiting, but it certainly, what's the word, wrenched up working there at the University of Georgia. And by the way, the folks there in the state of Georgia were outstanding to Jamie and I.
Coach, we'll go back down here front to Tom.
Yeah, hey, Tom Murphy again, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. You've got a lot of defensive backs and had some six DB looks in spring. Is that a product of what your roster looks like right now, or the trends in college football that dictate that?
Well, I think it depends on who you're playing, obviously, and that's, you have to be ready for that. If you look at it, we're sitting with 3 D linemen, 2 linebackers, and 6 defensive backs. Basically might be a base depth chart for us. Certainly that's not where we want to stay. We want to be able to play a four down line. Obviously, we feel like we're going to be able to do that. But to answer your question, yes, probably it was what we had when we walked in, and that's where our better players were. So Barry certainly did studies. He knew how to run a 3-man front, but he did studies through other colleges to see how they're running that program, because the bottom line is all of us want to get the best players we have on the team on the field at the same time.
Okay, we'll go back over here on the left, David.
Hey, Coach, David Basil with 103.7 The Buzz. There's an old saying, I believe it, that a team takes on the personality of its head coach. I always felt that way when I played. If that's true, what kind of personality is this Razorback team going to have this year?
Well, I hope they're very confident, talk with their pads. There's no reason to say a lot of things that can't let my butt override my mouth. If you want to get something done, you got to go physically do it. You got to go take it. The only way you can win, the only way you have a chance to win is play hard. That's the only way you have a chance. Then you have to be knowledgeable. You have to be unafraid. You have to be all those things. But I guess the most thing is that I believe I'm at the University of Arkansas, and is the best university in the country, and that's what I want them to believe. And if they do that, then they're going to go out there and play hard.
Coach, we'll go right down here in the center to Scott.
Hey, Sam. Scott Rabelais from the Baton Rouge Advocate. I walk every day. I'm not too svelte yet either, but, I'm glad you're out there doing it. I see you've been coaching for well over 30 years. The last year and a half, what's it been like to try to stay relevant as a coach and current with all the change? Have you ever seen more change in a short period of time as a coach? And how do you try to stay, on top of your game, as it were?
Well, that's difficult, because I'm a big guy. I am who I am, but you have to stay relevant, and it's difficult. I've got an Instagram account, but I don't know how to get on it, Twitter, I'm pretty good at Twitter. I don't tweet much, but I'm pretty good at reading, and so our assistant coaches, our young guys, they kind of teach me some of that stuff, a little bit more. And but to stay relevant, it's, really just trying to find out from the kids what's important, and then if it's important to them, then it's damn sure important to me, and then that's when I learn the best.
Coach, we're going to go in the center section, about midway back.
Corey Diaz with the Greenville News in South Carolina. Sam, going back to your time under Kirby at Georgia, Shane Beamer also spent some time with you there as well. How confident are you in his ability to lead the South Carolina football team back to a position of prominence in the SEC East Division? And then 2, have you spoken with him at all, and have you lent to him any advice as he enters his first year as the head coach?
Well, let's answer the first one. He's going to do a great job at South Carolina. He's prepared. He was ready for that job. He's going to do a great job. He's going to do a fine job over there. We've spoken several different times. He doesn't really need my advice. You know, we've kicked a few things back and forth between the two of us, but he's going to do a good job. South Carolina's going to be happy they hired him.
Coach, we'll stay in the same section, just a few rows up.
Hi, Sam. Eric Blum, Columbia Daily Tribune. We talked to Missouri head coach Eli Drinkwitz earlier today, and when he was asked about the Texas-Oklahoma news, he preferred the rivalry with you guys and focusing on the one he currently has. How do you evaluate the state of the Missouri versus Arkansas rivalry, and what does it mean to have that game to your program every year?
I think it's a very good rivalry. You know, obviously we haven't been on the winning side of that in the last 5 years. I think the last time we beat Missouri was my last year at Arkansas as the offensive line coach. But certainly when Barry was the head coach over there, they beat Arkansas 4 times in a row. And so it's probably might be a little bit more of a rival for the people that are getting their butt kicked. You know, I don't know. You'd have to ask Eli, but we've been getting ours done, and I love the fact that Missouri's close to us. Eli and I are good friends, but at the same time, we're very competitive as well. And I'm glad we look at it at Arkansas as Missouri as our number one rival.
We have time for 2 more. We'll start here in the front on the right-hand aisle. Trey.
Trey Biddy, Hog Sports. Coach, you mentioned some battles in the secondary, and we all know about Jalen Catalon and Monteric Brown, probably one of the more underrated players in the conference. I was curious if you could go into some detail on, where some of that competition is, who's involved, and maybe a young guy or a dark horse or something that might be emerging.
Brooks and Slusher, they're in there. And Slusher's kind of battling with some other areas, as well. Chavis is definitely in a battle with Joe, and Simeon Blair has got a battle as well going on with him. The 2 corners, Clark and Day, they certainly are in a battle, and of course Kyrie and Mo Brown. So I think if you go 1 and 2 deep, that's probably the most talented position that we have is the secondary. They're also very, very aggressive. In other words, they're great leaders. You don't have to worry about that group and their work ethic. Trent Gordon would also be a guy that certainly battling Blair and or Fouché and or Brooks. He's another guy that came in. So a lot of battles right there between those guys.
All right, Coach, we'll take one final question over on our left-hand side.
Hey, Coach. Kate Thomas, WAFB TV in Baton Rouge. I know that you're one of the few head coaches in college football that has an offensive line background. Do you consider yourself the torchbearer for your offensive line brethren? And what can you do to help other offensive line coaches become head coaches?
What you don't realize, thank you for the question. What you don't realize is, if you're an offensive line coach, you talk to 20 people every day. It's not like you have 5 guys in your room or this, that, and that. So you are coordinating a team of basically half the offense, You have to understand secondary play because that helps you understand blitzes. You have to understand caps. You have to understand different fronts, what they mean. So you're very knowledgeable. All these offensive line coaches are. I certainly don't want to be the torchbearer. I don't want that kind of pressure on me. But I would like to see if they're qualified and they're ready to go. I think a big part of me being being the head coach at Arkansas was because I was there at Arkansas before, and I think Mr. Yurchek understood the passion I had. I had to be qualified, but I think a big part of mine was a passion I had for the University of Arkansas too. So I think it kind of worked in hand that way. But I certainly want to do a good job for the state of Arkansas and for the university and certainly for offensive line coaches so they might have this wonderful opportunity in the future.
Coach Pittman, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Alabama has a record number of open jobs. Find yours at your local career center.